Hi, Peraton Weather meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, August 11th, and we have Tropical Storm Fred to talk about this morning. It has indeed intensified enough to be classified as a tropical storm, moving to the west-northwest around 16 miles per hour and maximum sustained winds around 40 miles per hour. Here's the latest visible satellite imagery loop from the College of DuPage weather website. And indeed, it's a pretty organized area of showers and thunderstorms moving over the warm waters of the Caribbean Sea. This is the island of Hispaniola right here. This is the eastern half of the island. Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico right here. So it is almost completely out over the open waters right now. That should allow for, potentially allow for some additional intensification over the next several hours, as again it continues to move on a west-northwest track. This time of the year the waters are certainly quite warm enough to support hurricanes in the Caribbean Sea and also in the Gulf of Mexico. And it looks like this system will head towards the Florida Straits, perhaps impacting the southern part of Florida by the early part of the upcoming weekend, and then it'll spill out over into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And that's a time period of a lot of concern on my part, because the upper air pattern is really conducive to some potential intensification once it gets out over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. And here's the latest official storm track as depicted by NOAA's National Hurricane Center. Don't have much, if any, disagreement with this. It looks like it'll impact the island of Hispaniola right here in the next several hours. Haiti on the western side, Dominican Republic on the eastern side. It's already, by the way, a tropical storm, so it's a little bit stronger than what NOAA was depicting a few hours ago. It continues on a west-northwest track near the northern coast of Florida. By the early part of the weekend, it heads to the Florida Straits, just the Keys of Florida right here all the way down to Key West, down in the southwestern tip. Have an impact there by the early part of the upcoming weekend, and then it spills out over into the Gulf of Mexico, the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. Right here, waters are very warm. A little bit concerned that it could intensify a little bit more so than what the National Hurricane Center is depicting here, perhaps to a hurricane level. So we'll have to monitor that over the next couple of days. Again, sea surface temperatures are certainly conducive to strengthening here into hurricane or even major hurricane status, and the upper level pattern is quite favorable as well for intensification once it gets out over into the Gulf of Mexico. So while I tend to agree with this track, I may have a little bit of a disagreement with the intensification levels as depicted here by the Hurricane Center. Maybe a little bit on the light side over in this part of the Gulf of Mexico. Well, we've talked about the upper air pattern being more favorable in coming days for tropical systems to move from the east to the west towards Florida, towards the Gulf of Mexico. It certainly is a red flag this time of the year when you have high pressure ridging building across southeastern Canada, northeastern part of the U.S. Basically, tropical systems can undercut that ridge and impact the southeastern part of the nation, all the way really from the Caribbean Sea up to the Bahamas, the Gulf of Mexico, and Florida, whenever you have high pressure building to the north. This is the forecast map from the ensemble run of the GFS last night at 6E, and it's been consistent. So have other models with the building of this high pressure ridging across southeastern Canada. This is a rolling 5-day period. The current 5-day period right here shows some orange over northeastern part of the nation, southeastern part of Canada on this particular map. That suggests higher heights than normal, higher pressures than normal. Watch what happens as we move through into the middle part of August and even beyond that. This is now going all the way out to about 10 days now, days 6 to 10, August 16th to August 21st, go out even a little bit farther here. And you have this pattern here setting up with high pressure ridging over the southeastern part of Canada, right in this region right here, certainly by the time we get to the middle of the month. And again, that just opens the door for tropical systems to move from the east to the west towards Florida, towards the Gulf of Mexico, And this particular system looks like it'll cross right over the island of Hispaniola and then move right into the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. And indeed, there is a second system in the eastern part of the Atlantic Ocean that could take a similar track. Again, this is a red flag, a warning for this part of North America, and it looks like we're going to have this situation for much of the, let's say, the second half of August, really from about later next week all the way through to the end of August. We're going to have this high pressure ridge sitting over the southeastern part of Canada, so indeed it may be quite an active period. Once this system moves out over the eastern Gulf of Mexico, it could intensify even stronger than what the Hurricane Center is suggesting right now, and it is quite likely to move up through the eastern states next week. Let's talk about that now. Okay, we're looking at the operational run of the GFS. The previous maps were from tropicaltidbits.com, by the way, and were from the ensemble run of the GFS. This is the operational run, and want to point out especially what it is forecasting right now for the movement of Tropical Storm Fred, especially next week. And I tend to agree with this potentially moving through the eastern part of the U.S. The European model is kind of a similar solution, and that upper air pattern suggests it very well could happen. First of all, for today and tomorrow and Friday, very hot in the Mid-Atlantic region, perhaps reaching a peak in temperatures on Thursday afternoon, tomorrow afternoon, and the upper 90s in some places like D.C., maybe even Philadelphia and New York City as well. Very hot today, tomorrow, and Friday in the Mid-Atlantic region. Certainly cannot rule out additional afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. Many areas in the Mid-Atlantic region, in the I-95 corridor region, experienced some heavy downpours last evening, interrupting the Phillies game in South Philadelphia, interrupting the Mets game in New York City, and same thing could happen later today into tonight, on Thursday afternoon and evening, and even on Friday afternoon and evening. Now let's move forward here with this heat wave in the Mid-Atlantic region, and we're also focusing in on this part of North America here with Tropical Storm Fred. Here we go. By the time we get into the end of the work week, here it is, Friday evening forecast map. Notice this area, kind of a concentrated area of showers and thunderstorms as depicted by the 6Z GFS right near the Florida Straits region, and that is associated with what is now Tropical Storm Fred. And again, it could end up right over the Keys of southern Florida by the early part, let's say Friday night, early Saturday morning here. Meanwhile, a cold frontal system does work its way through the Mid-Atlantic region, providing some relief to the heat for the upcoming week, and especially by the time we get to Sunday. Look for highs on Sunday, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, more likely in the low to mid 80s as compared to the mid and upper 90s over the next few days. But watch what happens here with Fred as it, again, probably spills out maybe a little bit farther west of this over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Sea surface temperatures are plenty warm to support hurricane level storm here, maybe even major hurricane level storm. High pressure at the surface here by Sunday, and we know that high pressure ridging aloft is really building into southeastern Canada by the early part of next week, again playing a crucial role. Just look at this, the flow of air around high pressure is clockwise, so that promotes movement of these tropical systems from the east to the west and allows for the possibility of it riding right up through the eastern states. And indeed, the GFS probably has kind of a second landfall, and this is certainly on the table, over the Panhandle region of Florida after it moves over the Florida Keys early in the weekend. And from that position, it very likely could move right up along, let's say, the spine of the Appalachians, producing some heavy rain along the way. GFS tends to do that in terms of the storm track, but it also tends to kind of wash it out. I don't know if I buy that situation. I think it'll probably hold together next week and potentially could result in some significant rainfall all the way up into the Mid-Atlantic region. Again, GFS kind of washes it out. And we're talking a week from now next Wednesday and Thursday time frame. So watch for that as a possibility, that Fred will move to the Florida Straits by the early part of the weekend, and maybe over the Florida Keys, and then right over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, perhaps making another a landfall in the Panhandle region of Florida, and then potentially riding up along the spine of the Appalachians next week. Of course, we'll focus in on this and concentrate on this over the next few days as we go through the work week. Meantime, in the Mid-Atlantic, very hot today, tomorrow, and Friday. That's it for now. For PeratonWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.